The shoots of broom and oak and meadowsweet pushed their way up through the soft spring warm earth. They twisted and they twined, and very slowly but surely they twisted themselves into the form of a woman, Blodeuwedd. Now, this was the work of Gwydion and Math, and on this night, Gwydion and Math stand over their flower creation and they pour incantations over her like oil. And as the sun rises in the sky that morning and it pours down onto Blodeuwedd, she takes her first breath. And it's almost as though, as she takes that first breath, she steals the breath from Gwydion and Math, because she is more beautiful than they had possibly imagined. Her breath, her skin, her lips, as sweet as nectar. The two magicians have conjured a wife for Lle Llaw Goffes, so named for the soft blonde curls on the top of his head. Now, I think it's important that you know where Lle Llaw Goffes came from. The egg that made Lle Llaw Goffes was pinched, filched, stolen, tricked from the womb of Arianrhod by Gwydion. Gwydion, who was a great magician, but he was also a mass slaughterer and a rapist. And he scooped up this egg. He scooped up this egg before anybody could notice, and he wrapped it up in silk, and he placed that silk bundle into a small chest, and he placed that chest at the bottom of his bed, and I think he whispered incantations over that chest, and I think he made that egg turn into a child. When Arianrhod found out what Gwydion had done, she was furious, she was spitting. Now, she could have struck that child dead, she could have, but she didn't. You have made this child, Gwydion, so you may keep him, you may love him, you may do as you want with him, but I want nothing to do with him. And this forced nature stops here, Gwydion. And with that, Arianrhod placed a curse on the child. She placed a curse on the child that he would never marry a woman that was human born. And so here we are in the woods, Blodeuwedd taking her first breath, and the dew had barely dried from her petal-soft skin before she found herself wrapped in the marital bed of Lle Llaw Goffes, the spirit of Gwydion breathing over them, whispering to Lle, goading him to tease open those petals that were not yet ready to be opened. Now, Blodeuwedd, she did her best to love Lle Llaw Goffes. Oh, she did, she tried. She tried so hard. But love, like nature, cannot be forced. One day, Lle was sent to the north, to Caerdathil. And it just so happened that on this day, a great stag ran onto the grounds as Blodeuwedd was out walking, and this stag, it was pursued by a handsome huntsman, Gronw Pebir. And as soon as Gronw Pebir looked on Blodeuwedd, there was not a part of him that did not love her. And the same was true for Blodeuwedd. For her, he was like the sun, and when that sun shone onto her, like the sun shines onto a flower, she opened. Perfectly right, perfectly natural. For 3 days and 3 nights, Blodeuwedd and Gronw Pebir were wrapped in one another's arms. And by the end of the third night, there was no part of either of their hearts that did not belong to one another. Eventually, Gronw had to leave. Llei came home. How Blodeuwedd wanted to marry Gronw Pebir, but she couldn't. The only way that could ever happen was if Llei was to die. Now, Llei was a work of magic, the son of a goddess. The only way, well, he couldn't die. There was no way that he could die, or so it was thought. And then very slowly, a little thought began to trickle into Blodeuwedd's mind. What if? Llei and Blodeuwedd, they were in bed. Blodeuwedd was tossing and turning. What is the matter, said Llei. I had a nightmare, said Blodeuwedd. I dreamt that you died. Llei just laughed. Don't worry, Blodeuwedd, there is no way that I can die. Are you sure? Is there no way at all? Well, it is very hard to kill me, said Llei. Well, tell me, said Blodeuwedd. Tell me how you might die, so that I might prevent it from ever happening. I can only be killed, said Llei, with a spear that has been carved over a year, but only on Sundays when people are at Mass. Well, said Blodeuwedd, that's unlikely, but it's not impossible. It's more difficult than that, said Llei. I cannot be killed outside. I cannot be killed inside. I cannot be killed on a horse. I cannot be killed on foot. Thank you, said Blodeuwedd. I feel a little better now. That first Sunday, Blodeuwedd set to work carving that spear. And over the next year, this riddle, it muddled and played in her mind. And by the end of the year, she had it. She'd cracked it. She knew what to do. Llei and Blodeuwedd are walking along the river. It's Llei's birthday. I have arranged a gift for you, said Blodeuwedd. And as they rounded the corner of the river, there in front of him was a bathtub full of hot steaming water and rich oils. A bath by the river for you, Llei. Over the top of this bath, there was a thick thatched roof with no walls, just in case it rains, said Blodeuwedd. Llei climbed down into the water. He washed himself, and he was just about to get out when Blodeuwedd appeared. Look what I found, she said. A goat. She had a rope. At the end of the rope, there was a goat, a billy goat. I've had this great idea. You are so good at balancing, Llei. How do you think you would be at balancing on this goat? Oh, go on, she said. It would make me laugh so much. And it was a little bit weird, to be honest, but Llei agreed because she seemed so keen on the idea. So Llei, he's just climbing out of this bathtub. And there's the goat. And he's just stepping onto the goat. And he's just about to straighten up and step his other foot onto the goat when his eyes lock with Gronw Pebir. Gronw Pebir leaps up from his hiding place. He pulls the spear behind him. He fires it. But Gronw had never been a very good shot. The spear misses. It digs into Llei's side. Llei shrieks with agony, and immediately he's transformed into an eagle. He goes flying up into the sky, this great spear hanging from him, blood pouring down. The sky goes black. Now, in Wales at this time, not very much could happen without the wind catching hold of it and carrying it to Math, the great magician. When Math heard of Blodeuwedd's scheme, he was furious. He was spitting. He sent Gwydion straight away to go and find Llei, wherever he might be. And he searched the whole of North Wales and Powys until eventually Gwydion found Llei at the top of an oak tree, a horrible wreck of a bird. guts and maggots falling down from him, he beckoned him down. He touched him with his magic rod. Immediately, Lle was transformed. He was skin and bones. Over the next few months, he nursed Lle back to health. And once that was done, he turned his head to revenge Blodeuwedd. He hunted her down. She saw him coming. She ran to the mountains. Her maids went with her. They stood around her. They tried to hold Gwydion back. He drove them up onto the mountain, up to a lake. There was nowhere to turn. He drove them into the water. The maids could not swim. The maids drowned. And then he cursed Blodeuwedd, or so he thought. He touched her with a curse, and immediately she felt her arms stretching out. She looked out, and they had transformed into wings. She felt herself shrinking smaller, smaller, smaller. She felt her face stretching into a beak. Gwydion had transformed Blodeuwedd into an owl. A curse, he thought, never to see the light of day, always to be mocked by all of the other birds. But little did he know he gave her a blessing. Little did he know that was the way things were supposed to go. Blodeuwedd had budded. She had blossomed, and now was the time for her long and endless night. As an owl with her great big eyes, she could see everything. And I like to imagine Blodeuwedd, which is Welsh for owl. I like to imagine Blodeuwedd circling over the land. I like to imagine her circling over my house. I imagine her circling above my bed. And then just before the sun comes up, she travels to the north. She travels to Caer Arianrhod, to Arianrhod, the great goddess's castle. And she flies into those rafters and she perches on that great silver wheel as Arianrhod sings her lullabies, and she drifts off into a deep, deep sleep.